Happy Thursday, happy April webinar here at Art Bridges Foundation. Hopefully all of you have your chats open. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. So if you'd like to put your name and your location and which institution you're with in the chat, we'd love to see it. Also keep in mind that a portion of today's show we will dedicate to your questions and comments. So keep an eye out at the end of our program today to be able to put your information and details in there. I'd like to welcome everyone once again to our April webinar. My name is Rashida Phillips, and I serve as the Director of Partnerships here at Art Bridges Foundation. A pleasure to have all of you join us once again as we delve into initiatives that are designed to enhance the accessibility and engagement of the American art and communities nationwide. We have an exciting lineup for you today. We'll start with a brief overview of Art Bridges, highlighting our mission and resources available to all partners. We'll then discuss some fascinating groupings from the American Folk Art Museum, which are now available for a 2-year loan through our partner loan network. Next, we'll introduce the latest additions to the Art Bridges collection and provide an in-depth look at Metal the Mirror, our innovative exhibition currently captivating audiences nationwide. We'll also hear about a new traveling exhibition, The Wider World and Scrimshaw, on loan from the New Bedford Whaling Museum. And finally, we will examine the artworks that are brought to life through our learning and engagement programming, developed in collaboration with our museum partners. As we proceed, again, we'll be monitoring the chat for any questions that you might have during the program, so don't hesitate to drop your thoughts, ideas, and questions there. Now I'd like to take a few minutes to share some background on Art Bridges. Our foundation was established in 2017 by Alice Walton, who has always believed in the power of art to transform lives. She recognized that art isn't meant to be hidden and stayed away in storage, but needs to be seen, experienced, and engaged with people everywhere. You may know that Alice founded Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art in Bentonville, Arkansas, an institution that's proved to be an enormous interest in great art beyond our country's major metropolitan centers. By deliberately limiting storage space at Crystal Bridges, Alice emphasized that art should be out and about in galleries, on display for visitors rather than just tucked away. Building on that idea, Art Bridges was created to help museums of all shapes and sizes share artworks more broadly, with the goal of ensuring that every community has access to great American art. At its core, Art Bridges' mission is to deliver meaningful experiences with art for personal and community well-being. We do this by partnering with museums nationwide, whether large, small, urban, or rural, to provide support for getting American art out of storage and into the local audiences' communities. We currently collaborate with over 250 plus museums, and we've supported more than 900 plus projects that have reached over 20 million people. These initiatives have taken shape across the country, but our goal is to continue to expand underrepresented regions and communities. Our partners, again, are of all shapes and sizes and span across the U.S. and its territories. We focus on 2 main pillars. Number 1, art sharing. We are dedicated to fostering long-term art sharing partnerships among museums of all sizes to get artworks out of storage and share them with communities nationwide through various art sharing programs like the Partner Loan Network. Number 2, community engagement, providing funding and resources to create impactful programs around art sharing projects so that visitors and museums can engage with meaningful art in meaningful ways. As we continue our journey today, we are eager to demonstrate how Art Bridges can elevate the reach and cultural impact of your museum. Now let's move on to one of our key highlights of today's webinar, traveling exhibitions. We fund, develop, and tour exhibitions to provide broader access to American art. The organizing institution receives a flat fee for a 2-year loan period and then collaborates with us to develop the exhibition and any tour materials. We manage the tour, work directly with you as lenders to issue tour agreements, and vet and book venues that provide the tour packages. We also cover direct costs related to the tour, including insurance, crating, packing, and shipping. For those borrowing venues, we cover 20 to 70% of shared and local costs associated with the exhibition. There's no participation fee, and borrowers are encouraged to apply for learning and engagement funding to develop programming related to the presentation at their exhibition. I'd now like to introduce Naomi Slipp, the Douglas and Cynthia Crocker Endowed Chair for the Chief Curator and Director of Museum Learning at the New Bedford Whaling Museum. Naomi is recognized and renowned for her insightful exploration of the intersections between art and science in the 19th century. Today, she'll share insights on the wider world and Scrimshaw, a traveling exhibition that promises to captivate and educate. Naomi, tell us how our partners can get more involved and what makes this exhibition a must-see.
Thank you, Rashida. Thank you for that introduction, and thank you to the team at Art Bridges for allowing me to talk about this project, and of course for traveling the exhibition and allowing it to be shared with new audiences. I'm very excited to talk about the exhibition, but first I just want to introduce the institution for you all. The New Bedford Whaling Museum was founded in 1903 as the Old Dartmouth Historical Society, and today the institution ignites learning through explorations of art, history, science, and culture rooted in the stories of people, the region, and an international seaport. We hold large collections related to local history, including the American commercial whaling industry and its global reach. And this exhibition really springs from that regional connection and the strengths of our permanent collection. So the Wider World in Scrimshaw began with a symposium, expanded to include a broad team of advisors and staff, and included specially developed resources, a catalog, and public programming, and ultimately brought together hundreds of collection items, contemporary art, and film and video in the gallery in order to explore maritime spaces as areas or places of cultural connection, particularly between commercial whaling, carving traditions like Scrimshaw, and marine mammals, the animals traveling through these spaces in the Pacific world in the 1800s. The project was organized in consultation with an incredible advisory board of artists, scholars, and culture bearers, and in partnership with staff here at the museum. And ultimately, we explored the rich cultural traditions, kinds of carvings, and material exchanges that emerged in these cultural spaces across the Pacific world, many of which continue to shape artistic practice and community life today. The exhibition takes Scrimshaw, which is traditionally defined as objects carved by whalers on the byproducts of marine mammals, and places it into conversation with carved decorative arts and material culture made by Indigenous community members and people from across the Pacific world. It raises questions, therefore, about identity, about place and materials, and considers how exploration, relationships with animals, and whaling, both internal to the communities that whalers visited and external, impacted the production of material culture in this region. And as you're seeing here on the screen, many communities across New England and the Pacific world, including in Oceania, the Pacific Northwest, and the Arctic, have cosmologies related to whales, distinctive maritime traditions involving marine mammals, and vibrant kinds of carving. They were also involved in American whaling ventures and were impacted by colonialism and American cultural influence. And here are two really wonderful examples from the exhibition: an early American textile made by Sylvia Grinnell and a print by Art Thompson from the 1990s. The exhibition uses maps throughout as a device to consider different kinds of knowledge and ways of living within larger ecosystems. And the exhibition, as we presented it, had no set direction. Like an ocean, visitors could move wherever they wanted across the space of what was framed as the Pacific world. So you're seeing a map here that was in the entry point of the exhibition that identified through overlays where American whalers went across the Pacific, the cultures that were in these spaces and the communities that lived across them, and then the species that traveled throughout these areas and lived within them. And maps repeat across the exhibition in different ways in order to serve as frames of reference, but also opportunities to shift audiences' ideas about place, identity, and environment. Starting in the 1830s, many communities across the Pacific Pacific world came into contact as U.S. whaling vessels traversed the region to extract natural resources, and that included toothed and baleen whales, seals, walrus, other marine mammals, and other forms of natural resources like coconuts, which you're seeing here. This economy drove exploration and trade, but it also had significant impacts on the species and the communities that lived within these places. U.S. whale ships stopped regularly throughout this vast territory, and they established colonies, shore whaling stations, and trade networks. They picked up supplies, materials, and crew. And because of this, U.S. whale ships were very diverse, but also many of the earliest American consuls were established in these locations. Crews included, for example, Black men, both free and formerly enslaved, Native Americans, immigrants, Azorians, Cape Verdeans, European descended men, and Pacific Islanders. Indeed, by the 1840s, 1 in 5 folks on a whale ship were from the Pacific region. Interpretation throughout the exhibition was designed to be layered, and it includes historical framing, thematic context, but also throughout guest contributions by artists, culture bearers, and scholars that reflect on specific items. And so you can sort of see the orange mapping as we presented it, which is highlighting items that are then described by contributors throughout the exhibit. So there wasn't one curatorial voice here, but really interpretation made up of framing from many folks that connect concepts across sections, and then also included film and video. You can see the tablet at the left. That one played an Aboriginal Australian animation, a film that spoke about the sea and related to Aboriginal cosmologies. In this way, we aim to kind of create a lot of ways to enter into and think about the various different parts of the story, stories told in the exhibition, and allow visitors with different interests to explore those in different ways. The exhibition really thought about carving from many different perspectives. That was a lot of the point of departure, to think about how these points of intersection and moments of connection might be demonstrated in the material culture from the collection. And so you're seeing examples here. Some of the questions that we asked were, how did these encounters influence items produced, but also how did they impact communities and people and their understandings about culture and cultural traditions? And ultimately, the exhibition is about mobility, about cultural and material exchange, and it connects throughout the historical and the contemporary, linking communities and practices from the historical past to today. The stories encompassed within are about survival of species and communities, and hopefully, with visitors, they speak about the future and what we collectively make of it. The project considers different cultural practices, and you're seeing many examples across the screen here, but I'll also highlight on the lower right a number of works that were commissioned by contemporary artists to speak in conversation with items in the exhibition, like the work of Sonia Kelly Combs, who created new artifact seal effigy totems for the project. Another one of the goals of the exhibition was to connect people, places, and animals with that material culture, and many of the materials of the items presented in the exhibit are from the bodies of marine mammals. And so that's a really important thread that we wanted to underscore and to make that transparent for people, and then also to connect that back to communities, many of which relied on those animals, and when the impacts of whaling really decimated some of those species. As the exhibit hopefully makes clear then, the story of Scrimshaw is extraordinarily diverse. It reflects the global reach of whaling. It includes many different communities and people from across the Pacific world and around the globe, from Cape Verde to the Azores, to Brazil, to the Pacific Islands, to Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, Aotearoa, and beyond, all the way up into what is today Alaska and the Arctic. Individuals may have served on shipboard, but they were also involved in these maritime networks and they were impacted by them. the items of material culture in the exhibition help tell these stories and ultimately think about and reflect on what happened in these spaces. Most important, though, through collaborations and diverse interpretation, film, contemporary art, and public programs, this historical exhibition draws connections to the present and underscores the continuance across these communities and cultural practices today. So we were able to organize a really wonderful array of public programs with a roster of almost 50 individuals who were involved in the project and its development, from our advisory board to our catalog contributors to the artists that we worked with. Um, we organized programs that included programs with artists. We also did a really wonderful film series of films from across the Pacific world. Um, and then we had, you're seeing here just an example of some of the programs we ran. We also did a number of roundtables with members of our advisory board who came together and had conversations about their research and interests and how they related to the project. We developed ancillary materials, including teacher resources, a dynamic website, and then also a catalog. And so there are a lot of ways, hopefully, that if you were to, work with Art Bridges to bring on this show, you would have a lot of different dynamic opportunities to engage in programming and other kinds of ways to interface with your audiences. So with that, I will thank the funders that helped us bring the project to fruition and stop my share. But thank you, everyone, for listening, and I hope you're intrigued.
Thank you, Naomi. We love working with partners like you all, just because we define American art much more broadly here at Art Bridges, really art of the American experience. And so it's really exciting to be able to bring this opportunity and these treasures out and about to communities that may not have had experiences or seen such beautiful work in their own special spaces. So thank you so much for sharing that. Again, that's The Wider World and Scrimshaw. And we look forward to sharing that out as a traveling exhibition opportunity with you. I'd now like to shift our focus to the cornerstone of our art sharing initiatives. Excited to introduce you to the Partner Loan Network. This program is a key part of how Art Bridges fosters the circulation of American art. Think of us or think of this work as kind of an interlibrary loan program, but we're sourcing and sharing art among museums nationwide. Lenders identify works from their collections to create groupings of 2 to 5 artworks that are available for 2-year loan periods. We support lenders and borrowing venues by absorbing costs derived from insurance, object preparation, crating, shipping, packing, and installation support. We also provide 2 phases of funding to the lenders and encourage borrowers to apply for learning and engagement funding for up to $25,000 per year to support related programming and community engagement. Joining us today to discuss his experience with the Partner Loan Network is Austin Losada, Art Bridges Curatorial, Collections, and Exhibitions Fellow at the American Folk Art Museum. Austin brings a rich background in the history of American art and material culture with a special emphasis on photography. He earned his MA from the Winter Arthur Program in American Material Culture at the University of Delaware and a BA in art history and German from Rutgers University. Austin, we're really looking forward to hearing much more about the unique groupings available from loan and how they can transform museum experiences across the nation.
Thank you, Rashida. On behalf of the American Folk Art Museum, I want to express our excitement about our continued participation in the Partner Loan Network, something we view as a truly vital initiative that supports our ability to share artworks and their stories with wider audiences around the country. And like you said, today I'm eager to share a little bit about the works that are currently available for loan. But before doing so, I'd like to introduce the museum and its mission for those who have never visited. Initially chartered in 1961 as the Museum of Early American Folk Arts, the institution's collecting focus and exhibition programming has evolved over time, from a once narrow mission to highlight the vibrancy of vernacular art in the United States during the 18th and 19th centuries, to the collection's current international scope that champions vernacular, folk, and self-taught art across time and place. On the left of the screen, you'll see an installation image of an early 1972 exhibition titled The Fabric of the State, which celebrated domestic textile traditions. And on the right is the current exhibition at the museum, showcasing the paintings and embroideries by the Afro-Brazilian artist Madalena Santos Reinbold, the first exhibition of the artist's work in the United States. The common thread between these two exhibitions is the museum's continued commitment in elevating artists and artworks typically marginalized in mainstream art historical narratives, but are nonetheless vital and potent messengers of the social, economic, political, racial, material, and artistic histories that contribute to their existence. The Partner Loan Network allows the American Folk Art Museum to share these important and complex objects with institutions across the country. The 5 groupings available for loan bring together highlights from our collection and serve as introductions to the artists and artworks in the canon of folk and self-taught art. We hope that they offer institutions the ability to challenge preconceived notions about who or what deserves to have a voice in fine art institutions. The first 2 groupings are samplings that explore the breadth and depth of folk and self-taught art. This first selection, seen here, brings together a pair of decoys, a dynamic sea serpent weather vane, a polychrome eagle executed by Wilhelm Schimmel, a carousel animal attributed to the Danish master carver Charles Loof, a painted landscape view of Warnersville, Pennsylvania, and Clementine Hunter's depiction of plantation life in the rural South. This diverse selection of works offers borrowing institutions numerous interpretive angles, including an exploration of craft traditions, methods of picturing one's immediate surroundings, and the role of artistry in utilitarian objects. The second group features a familiar genre of objects as the first, including a carousel zebra produced by the Philadelphia-based company E. Joy Morris Carousel Company, an oversized curlew weather vane that once graced a 2-story barn behind a sports club in Seaville, New Jersey, and again a Clementine Hunter painting, but this time depicting the processing of cotton. Other objects include a handcrafted and painted pocket watch trade sign that advertised one's business in a dense urban environment, as well as an expertly carved bird tree that represents the pictorial and artistic traditions of 19th century Pennsylvania German communities. Another artwork in this group is the posthumous portrait of an unidentified child attributed to the artist George C. Hartwell. Its symbol-laden composition, featuring a departed ship in the background, a dead, cut-off trunk, a cluster of grapes, and scattered roses, communicated the weight of the child's death and customs surrounding death and mourning in the mid-19th century. The last work in this group is an evocative assemblage by Purvis Young, expressively depicting gatherings of people and horses on found wood. Purvis Young is the featured artist of our third group available for loan, highlighting 6 works that reflect his unique and formal approach to art making. Beginning in 1971, Young began a mural-like project in Goodbread Alley, a passageway in the historically segregated neighborhood of Overtown, Miami. Inspired by the Wall of Respect mural in Chicago and the Freedom Wall in Detroit, Young's approach consisted of adhering large-scale assemblages made of found wood and paint on the alley's walls. Constantly replacing the work for newly made creations, his mutable mural not only reflected the material reality of his environment, but also represented the social and political events facing his community and country. Reflecting on the interplay between his art and world news, Young stated, quote, "The war was going on then, war in Vietnam. That's when all the demonstrations were going on. Protests, protesters sitting in, marching. That's when I started the figure painting, people walking along, knocking each other down," end quote. Artworks like assemblage of crowd scenes might represent the profusion of anti-war protests taking hold in the United States in the 1970s, depicting each unique moment framed by strips of nailed and painted wood. Young viewed his works as their own form of protest, representing both the historical and contemporary issues plaguing his community. We were lucky enough to have these first 3 groupings spend 2 years together at Peoria Riverfront Museum in Peoria, Illinois, where Zach Zetterberg, their curator of folk art, organized the exhibition Folk, selections from the American Folk Art Museum, that place the works in dialogue with other folk and self-taught artists from private collections. The show inspired a series of public programs called Folk Fridays, where museum visitors learned about and participated in workshops that centered around a variety of craft and folk traditions such as metalworking. Our two newest groupings focus on 20th century self-taught artists from the southern United States. The first group features 3 artists that belong to the so-called Birmingham Bessemer School, an informal network of Black artists in Alabama. One of the most well-known from this group was Thornton Dial Sr., who spent his life working as a machinist at the local Pullman Standard Company factory and began quote-unquote making things, as he said, after losing his job. An early work by the artist shows his inventive reuse of a plant stand, which he turned into a small table in the form of a dog. His son Richard Dial, a manufacturer of wrought iron furniture, similarly transformed utilitarian objects into sculpture. Richard's untitled sculpture of a white man figured into a chair recalls the historical connection between the furniture form and power. The other Thornton Dial Sr. work in this group is more typical of the artist's output, a large-scale assemblage depicting a 2-headed tiger, which the artist used as a symbolic stand-in for himself. Thornton Dial, whose life spanned the institutionalized racism of the Jim Crow South, the modern civil rights movement, and the first African-American president, utilized the tiger cat as a way to explore the lived realities of Black Americans in the 20th century. Thornton's nephew, Ronald Lockett, whose work features a threatening group of animals peering down at a naked white figure, similarly explored the metaphorical and symbolic relationships between humans and animals. In this work, which is likely a sharp critique on the degradation of the natural world through human action, Lockett flips the taxonomic script, depicting a human figure being hunted by animals. The last group I'll share with you all, and is available for loan now, features several well-known makers that gained popularity after institutional interest in Black self-taught artists began to grow. Indeed, a number of the artists in this group, including Sam Doyle, Mose Tolliver, and David Butler, were part of the landmark exhibition Black Folk Art in America 1930 to 1940 that was organized by the Corcoran Gallery of Art in 1982. Although the show challenged American museums' lack of representation, it also sparked debates surrounding terminology such as the use of folk art when talking about Black visual culture. Undebatable, however, was the inventiveness in which these artists in this group approached art making. Jimmy Lee Sudduth, for example, preferred to use his own environmental knowledge when making pigments rather than relying on store-bought ones. The colors in his works are often derived from diverse matter such as soot, walnut hulls, coffee, berries, grass, pine needles, chalk, and mud. Other artists like Mary T. Smith, Sam Doyle, and David Butler uniquely exhibited their work on the exterior of their houses and yards, creating site-specific installations that broadcasted their artistic and personal philosophies to their communities. The works in this group are bound together by their diverse approaches to figuration, including a self-portrait in the case of Jimmy Lee Sudduth, or Sam Doyle's depiction of the community's local root doctor, Dr. Buzz. Other artworks are less about who is depicted and instead reveal each artist's unique visual and material language. I believe that there will be a link circulating in the chat to view these checklists in depth, and they're available for loan now, and I look forward to answering any questions at the end of the program you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Austin, for sharing such a diverse delight grouping, our many groupings. They are really wonderful objects that we love to see out and about at museums, and hope that they inspire our partners to create wonderful exhibitions. And just a thank you as well for your fellow work and contributions there at the American Folk Art Museum. Please remember again, if any of you have any questions, we will answer those at the end of our program today during our Q&A, and we're excited that many of you continue to join us. Next, I'd like to focus a little bit on our new acquisitions here at the Art Bridges in our Art Bridges collection. These acquisitions enhance our ability to support exhibitions and fill gaps in museum collections, ensuring that a diversity of artists and artworks are continually available to loan and inspire audiences nationwide. I'm really excited to introduce you to Julia Munn, our assistant curator at Art Bridges. Julia plays a crucial role in enriching our collection, supporting museum partners, and expanding accessibility in alignment with our foundation's mission. Her academic background in Asian American art history greatly informs our collection sharing possibilities. Julia, we're eager to hear about these new acquisitions and the innovative exhibition, Metal the Mirror. Please share with us the exciting details.
Thank you so much, Rashida, and good afternoon to everybody. Thank you so much for taking the time to attend our exciting webinar. As Rashida kindly introduced, my name is Julia Moon, and I'm the assistant curator at Art Bridges. And today I'll be talking about a fairly recent acquisition, a few of which that you should be able to see on the screen soon here. But it's a collection of 26 hot-dipped galvanized steel sculptures by Japanese-American artist Isamu Noguchi. But first, I want to provide a very brief biography of Isamu Noguchi to contextualize these sculptures. And so I'll go into a little bit next about what his life background is and where these sculptures situate in his career. But Noguchi was born in 1904 in Los Angeles to American educator Leonie Gilmore and Japanese poet Yone Noguchi. For many of his childhood years, Noguchi lived in Japan and returned to the United States as a teenager. There, he received a formal academic training in sculpture. But through the Guggenheim Fellowship, Noguchi was able to travel the world and studied under artists like Constantine Brancusi and Shi, who both completely reformed how Noguchi approached art. And while Noguchi is typically known more for his work in stone, he truly experimented with so many different mediums and developed this formative place in the modernist network and really developed this intensive vocabulary of abstract forms. And so he really pushed the boundaries of what sculpture is and could be for the public. But I really want to bring your attention towards the end of his life, when Noguchi designed a series of 26 galvanized steel sculptures with Gemini GEL in 1982 until 1983. Here in these images, you can see him working on the maquettes for Atomic Haystack, which is one of the works in the series. But these works are created out of sheets of metal, almost akin to Japanese kirigami or paper folding crafts. These works were then dipped into boiling zinc, which creates this beautiful textured surface that almost resembles pebbles in a stream or an epidermal layer of the skin. And as these sculptures oxidize and patina, the color of these sculptures will continue to change throughout time, and they'll never be experienced the same twice. Additionally, these sculptures reference previous works Noguchi had made or sort of expand on some of the interests that he had throughout his life. Therefore, these galvanized steel sculptures are truly an extension of his legacy, and they exist in multiple editions. So Art Bridges is really fortunate to be able to engage not only in preserving this legacy, but also extending access for our partners through our acquisition of the 4th edition. So I want to go briefly into our thought process. Once we received the sculptures, we had a big question. It can be difficult for partners to take all sculptures into one space. And we wanted to have flexibility in how partners could choose to activate them. So we decided to extend them through a couple of programs and make them available in different ways. So 10 of these sculptures would be available for individual loan through our collection loan program, but these would be placed indoors. 7 of these sculptures would also be available through individual loan, but they would be they would be placed outdoors. And then 9 of these sculptures would be traveled in an exhibition. And so there's a lot of flexibility with what partners can do with these sculptures. But I want to talk about next what I was particularly thinking about and what kind of narrative I wanted to expand upon these sculptures through an exhibition. And so, as I mentioned before, Noguchi is primarily known for his work in stone. And so, immediate question I had was why return to metal as the main medium so later in his career? And metal, specifically aluminum and steel, held a particular significance for Noguchi as a distinctly American material. It was related to industry, American manufacture, and when Noguchi returned to New York in 1958, he created a series of aluminum sculptures as a sort of symbolic statement of belonging to the United States. And so on the screen here, we can see some examples of these aluminum sculptures, like the Mirror, Orpheus, and Thanatos. So I really wanted to investigate again, like what made Noguchi return to metal as a preservation of his legacy. And so I'll talk a little bit more about my research into this next, but I wanted to get a wide scope of all of his works. And so while looking through the Isamu Noguchi Garden Museum catalog, I came across a, a passage that he wrote that reads, quote, "Here, where finally opposites come together, I see a surprising purity. Stone is the depth, metal the mirror. They do not conflict. I am fallible and must return to the present in our dreams of the universe, the comfort of belonging and the transience," end quote. So in this passage, Noguchi is specifically highlighting metal and comparing it to a mirror. However, something that really struck me was that he didn't juxtapose metal to stone as many might typically do, but rather argues that it comes together as one. And it made me think a lot about how Noguchi is constantly defined by these structures of duality, or how he is engaging with these structures of duality, whether it was East versus West, or American versus Japanese, or concepts like nature versus manufacture, or past versus future. When in reality, these like either or structures of different binaries are not so simple. Like even our identities are completely very complex, very complicated, and we are many things at once, and we're engaging in constant change in our lives. And so I really wanted to bring this narrative to light, especially within the context of Noguchi's story. And so next I want to talk about the show specifically. So I named the show after this quote, and I wanted to use Metal the Mirror to contemplate how Isamu Noguchi uses metal to not only examine this idea of change, literally in the sense of like how the metal changes over time, but also how he's simultaneously recognizing and eschewing binaries to create a between space. And the between is a very intentional word choice. Noguchi remarked in a later interview when receiving the National Medal of the Arts in 1987, that quote, "They probably wouldn't have given the medal to me if I were Japanese, only because I was a bona fide American, accepted as such, that I was permissible to be recognized. I can be an American or I can be a Japanese, but I cannot be both or in between," end quote. And so I use the 3 of his works on the screen here, Sky Mirror, Lady Mirror, and Duo, to thematically or to really represent 3 thematic areas in which between spaces exist in concepts he was interested in. So the human figure, the surrounding environment, and abstracted concepts. And so the other 6 sculptures of the show that I couldn't fit photos of into the slide, but they all tie into these core areas and really elucidate ideas of synthesis and change in different ways. And so I was really fortunate to have been able to write the didactics and work with graphic designers to provide layout and design elements. But something I find really exciting about Art Bridges traveling exhibitions, or with this anyway, is venues really get to participate in further interpreting the content of the tour package. Our partners know their audience is the best, and access comes through interpretation as well. So As an example, I have 2 images of installation photos at the Bruce Museum in Greenwich, Connecticut. And they're the first venue for the show, and I was really fortunate to visit these works in person. But they've organized the sculptures in line with my suggestions and the 3 thematic areas that I mentioned before. But they really participated in activating my writing for their audiences and translating the consequent didactics in English, Spanish, and Japanese. And next, I'm really excited to share what's in the future for Metal the Mirror. We have additional venues lined up to take the show, and I'm really excited to see how they choose to activate the show in their own spaces for their own audiences. And what's also really exciting is about this is that the show is sort of like a living project. There are still interpretive materials that I'm slowly working on, including a discussion on the paper maquettes Noguchi created in a similar time frame. And so this image on the screen is a paper model of one of the works in the show entitled Khaki Persimmons. And so this really represents and expands on Noguchi's experimentative process and really demonstrates, again, that kirigami quality of the metal sculptures. And then, of course, we want communities to engage with these sculptures and actually derive something meaningful out of this experience. So learning and engagement teams, both from Art Bridges and Borrowing Venues, have worked really hard on activating the exhibition for communities across the country, which you will all hear about next. But thank you all so much. I'll give it back to you, Rashida.
Thank you, Julia. I think, gosh, we're really excited about this one. Noguchi really is presenting, I think, some ever relevant themes here in this particular exhibition. So thank you for pulling it together. And again, we'll be excited to see it out and about at museums across the nation. Speaking of activating the work at museums, joining us today, we've got Jasmine Day Giacomi. She'll talk to us a little bit more about learning engagement initiatives, which I'll tell you are crucial parts of our mission that involve developing programs and support that really enhance educational and community engagement for our exhibitions. And these projects really aim to deepen the art's impact with and within community to spark meaningful conversations and interactions with the artworks themselves. So I am pleased to introduce Jasmine, who works closely with our partners to develop programs that actively engage communities and innovative approaches for impact. Today, Jasmine will share how she leverages themes from Metal the Mirror for dynamic in-gallery interactions and tailored community-specific events. Jasmine, we're keen to hear how these programs are coming to life under your guidance. Take it away.
Thank you, Rashida, and thank you for the introduction and for sharing a little bit about learning and engagement. Again, my name is Jasmine DeGiacomi. I'm the Learning and Engagement Manager here at Art Bridges. In our time together, I'm going to share an overview of learning and engagement and then shift to talking specifically about Metal the Mirror. So first, our mission in learning and engagement is to remove barriers and strengthen access to American art, to create opportunities for people to see themselves in and engage with art, and to build or co-create programming and engagement opportunities that meet people where they are, whether that means being multimodal or multi-entry point, and providing that variety for museum visitors. We accomplish this through strong supportive relationships with our partners. So we ideate together and have generative conversations to create people-centered programming, apply an equity-driven lens to decision-making, and challenge and reimagine traditional programming. Kind of all that to say that we are hoping to energize the field of American art by activating works in innovative and culturally responsive ways. But so how exactly do we do this? We provide the strategic support mentioned in the prior slide, and we provide financial support through learning and engagement awards to accompany our art sharing arms. So here shows expenditures we support, all of which are direct program or activity costs, honoraria, contract labor, transportation, translation services, supplies, printing, and marketing and outreach to specifically highlight the programs that are being funded. Now that we've talked about the how of Eleni, I hope you'll indulge me while I share a few Eleni activities our team thought up to activate Metal the Mirror. So the following 3 program ideas took inspiration from the works within the exhibition, and the exhibition sections of figural, nature, and abstraction that Julia mentioned previously, the didactic interpretation, and 3 main themes of exploration in the show: reflection, change, and duality. This first is an in-gallery activity. The next will be as well, and then we'll have one that's a public program. And I should perhaps preface that inclusion of these activities are not required if you borrow the exhibition, but instead they're inspiration. And honestly, they were a fun exercise for our L&E team to dream up with Julia. So this first is called My Own Reflection. Taking inspiration from the materiality of the galvanized steel, which reflects the people and things around them, as is shown in this photo where you can see the photographer literally in the piece. So it's tying to themes of reflection and identity, and seeing yourself within your community, your society, and in the works of others. So this activity could be high tech or low tech. What we thought up here is a high tech version of this that includes prompts of how visitors or community members see themselves. For example, where or how do you see yourself reflected, maybe in your local leadership, or if your location has public art or murals, how do you see your community through that public art of your city? These responses could be pre-recorded or recorded live in the gallery space and play through QR codes or through a listening device into the gallery. So that was a first activation idea we came up with. And now moving on to a second in-gallery option, kind of a much more low-tech version, something that is a lower lift and a lower cost, but also includes really intentional connection to the Noguchi works. So thinking of this as a Noguchi engineering challenge, which ties into the themes of reflection and change, but it also ties into whimsy and the fun of Noguchi's works that almost appear to defy gravity. This activity idea highlights the formal elements of the works, especially shape and form. It also aligns with the abstract grouping. Close looking of the works would be a precursor to this maybe design challenge or sculpture prompt. And it also encourages visitors and viewers to think like Noguchi. So using the paper maquettes as inspiration here also to plan, modify, and test sculptures like a design challenge would. So this is really a low-tech and scalable and intergenerational activity that could happen within the galleries themselves with a variety of materials like metallic paper or aluminum foil tape, if supervised or permitted within your space, pipe cleaners and such. And then lastly, we have one activity we dreamt up that would be a public program based around Mirror to the Sky, tying to themes of change and duality, thinking about how your view constantly changes as the sky moves around you, as maybe your environment changes, and centering this program on this work using an indoor or outdoor activity with a local astronomer, integrating nature into this program, and maybe even opening up to some of the astrological elements, if desired, that came into Noguchi's work as well, and the mythology that he was looking at and naming his works after. This could then be followed up with celestial art making, and it could be done for large groups or small groups, and provides a really wonderful opportunity to create a partnership with a local scientist, maybe a planetarium if you have it. So I know that was kind of quick and brief, but 3 activation ideas for making the works that are in Metal the Mirror pop even more. Our learning and engagement team really looks forward to collaborating with additional borrowers to see what innovative activities Metal the Mirror inspires for them and making those come to life through our Learning and Engagement Awards. For examples of what Learning and Engagement has funded in the past and other partner projects, please visit our Idea Center. Here's a short clip of how the Idea Center is navigated. So this includes past programs that we've supported with information about the program itself and some tips and tricks from the partner on how they made it possible with both the intended and actual outcomes and advice, as well as some really great photos, all thanks to our partners for this. But happy to answer any questions that are learning and engagement specific afterwards, if any are there. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll pass it back to you, Rashida.
Thank you so much, Jasmine. Always exciting to see how these works sort of live in community and how they're activated. And these are just such great ideas. As Jasmine mentioned, our learning and engagement team is always on hand to work, next to our partners on activating these exhibitions in your own spaces. So always looking forward to that. I'd love to take a little time now to open it up for Q&A. I see that we've had so many folks join us from across the nation. So always excited to welcome you all and see you all participating here. So I'm going to take a little time to look through some of your questions and see if we can get some answers to those. There's someone who's asking Naomi about Black mariners in the exhibition. Does this exhibition include some of those?
Sure. Thanks. That's a great question. Yes, there are identified makers of African and Afro-Indigenous heritage in the exhibition. However, as with a lot of examples of sort of what are defined as folk art, right, or material culture of this sort, many of the items in the exhibition are also maker unknown. But what we really try and do is build the kind of context of the diversity of individuals that would have been making material like this, so that the visitor also can understand the different kinds of backgrounds that makers might have brought to the production of these kinds of material items. So yes, and.
Yes. Thank you so much. Again, feel free to drop any of your questions or comments into the chat as we move forward. Peoria Riverfront will really miss those groupings from the Folk Art Museum. Austin, they're just commenting here how wonderful they've been sharing with them in the community. So
Yeah,
love to hear that.
yeah, they've been a wonderful partner, and I got to go there for a courier trip for another for like 47 decoys that we lent to the museum as a part of their initiative with the Peoria tribe. And yeah, they're a great partner, and I mean, we'll continue working with them. So
Since we're chatting with you a bit, Austin, wonder if you can share with us a little bit more about, why those particular groupings, how you all decided to put forward those objects to share.
sure, I think folk art as a definition is very amorphous and hard to define, and for me, it's always comes about when viewing the objects, sort of um, artworks that maybe speak to regional traditions, regional identities, um, often coming from makers and artists who are not formally trained or don't have artistic networks that we typically see in fine art institutions. And so we chose these groupings, especially the first two, as sort of sampler platters to sort of get people interested in understanding and what kind of material that we interpret and we steward. And understanding that just because a maker does not have formal artistic training, that these are extremely rich and complex objects that speak, as Naomi's exhibition talks about, material culture kind of finds its way into every nook and cranny of histories that have to do with economic, political, racial, cultural, and those objects really speak to those different identities at play. And so those were sort of sampler platters. And then the other ones we've put together because I was very interested in these artists. I think Purvis Young is an extremely fascinating artist who is clearly looking at the history of mural art in the United States and is putting a riff on that genre in his own particular way. And I think he's doing it extremely successfully. And they're just beautiful works that are complex to look at and maybe you don't understand right away. And so they're really objects that lend itself to long looking and close looking. And I feel that way about the other two groupings as well.
Great, thank you. Julie, I'm wondering, with you putting together the Metal, the Mirror, what was sort of the most exciting part of pulling this exhibition together to offer out to our network?
Yeah, absolutely. So on a personal standpoint, I'm very much early in my career, or in my curatorial career. So this is such an amazing opportunity, and truly, I'm just so lucky to be able to have worked with these sculptures. Um, but one other really exciting aspect for me was just uncovering so much about these sculptures, like piece by piece. Even though there's multiple editions of these works, I would say they're actually quite fairly like understudied and not quite as well known as Noguchi's like other works. And so um, it's been really, yeah, it's been really beautiful, honestly, like learning about what he's been thinking of and like what he's referencing. Like, for example, the Sky Mirror piece is a direct reference to a stonework that he's created, I believe in the 1970s. And so he's constantly referring back to his life. And so it was such a wonderful opportunity to, not just learn about these sculptures, but also like learn what these sculptures reveal about his life. Um, and with my background in Asian American art history, Noguchi is always Noguchi is such a formative figure in that history, but really talking about like something that concerns Asian Americans. Like it's not just like it's like duality, like the East versus West, American versus Asian is not it's not a such an easy binary to live within, and to see how Noguchi surpasses that and really contends with it, I think is something really important for partners to see and share with their own communities and share with Asian Americans in their communities as well. So I think I could rant about this a little bit more, but that's sort of the thoughts that I was thinking about when putting the show together.
Thank you, Julia. And then quickly, we've got a little time with Jasmine. Just wondering, Jasmine, what are some of those highlights, I think, around your work with some of our partners and with learning and engagement?
Yeah, I think learning and engagement is, not that I'm biased, the most fun part of working with partners. It is really rewarding for us as well to be able to ideate and co-create together, to put forth programs, activities that maybe wouldn't have been possible without the funding that Art Bridges supplies. We often are asking our partners to do something new, something innovative, something completely different that doesn't exist within their operational or strategic plans. And so being able to provide a way in which those things can happen is really rewarding. And it's also really wonderful to watch what partners come up with. And the ways in which they become excited to activate works from our collection, from our traveling exhibitions and partner loan network to make relevancy for their specific community. Because this is all, I think what's most precious are the people who are seeing the works. And so being able to work in learning and engagement and work with so many diverse partners to bring their specific communities in is just the highlight of learning and engagement for me.
Thank you so much, Jasmine, for sharing that. And thank you all for joining us. We're really grateful for all of you, Naomi, Austin, Jasmine, and Julia, for sort of sharing much more about our work here at Art Bridges Foundation. Excited about that wider world of Scrimshaw, Naomi. Folks who are interested in that traveling exhibition, please visit our website to ask more and learn more about that opportunity. Austin, really wonderful groupings there from the American Folk Art Museum, a valued partner of ours as well. great groupings that can go out and about to any of your communities and your museum institutions. So please look at our website and reach out for that. Julia, we're really excited about this sort of homegrown exhibition with Metal the Mirror that will live an even further life, and patina even more out and about in museum spaces. So reach out about that. And Jasmine and her crew and team are always on hand to help with those learning engagement ideas and ways in which we can help you all activate in community. Again, we've got lots of funding on deck for you all to help support the work that you're doing out and about in your institutions and in your communities. We look forward to having much more conversations with you about that. Please keep an eye out for follow-up email. We always ask about feedback. If there are other questions that you've got for us, please include them there. We'll do our best to get back to you. And on behalf of partnerships, on behalf of the Art Bridges Foundation and the rest of our staff and our special guests here, we wish you a wonderful afternoon, and we look forward to continuing the conversation with you. We'll see you next month at our May webinar. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.